Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are at TrukStuf, and today we're going to talk about the dreaded grid heater failure on a Cummins engine. We've seen a lot of videos on what it can do and what it can't do and how to prevent it, and aftermarket parts that we can use to prevent this problem from happening. And today we're just going to cover a few things about it. As you can see behind me, I've got the cab off of one, and it was because of a grid heater failure. Now this truck came in with a code of air intake grid heater system performance, and when I went through the data on the code, I found that the check engine light had been on for 178 key cycles, meaning it wasn't a new issue. It was a check engine light that persisted and eventually led to, we're going to call it, catastrophic failure. This problem could have been averted had customer brought in the vehicle right after the check engine light came on. We probably would have been able to catch it. You'll see here in a minute what I'm talking about, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. As far as how to prevent it in the future, what we can do on the aftermarket side to prevent an issue like this from happening, and a couple other little things about it. So first of all, what is it? The air intake grid heater is a grid heater that is designed to heat the incoming air on the engine. It helps reduce the emissions, and it provides a cold start aid. So with that being said, what the problem is that the connecting nut that holds the electrical cable to the air heater grid loosens up and falls down into the engine. Now that is a little bit of a misconception. What happens is, during repeated cycles of the air heater grid and the amount of current that runs through it, it causes the metal to expand and contract. Now, along with EGR gases making its way into the intake system, the high acidity level of the EGR gases also starts to do a massive and accelerated corrosion on the stud and the nut. When it's gone on for an extended period of time, that stud and or nut can fall off into the intake system and wind its way up into either cylinder 5 or cylinder 6. We see cylinder 6 more common, but I have seen cylinder 5 problems as a result of it. In this one, we're going to show you a little bit more on another video that I'll do after I get the engine tore down. As of right now, we've just got the cab off of. I've went through my preliminary diagnosis, removed fuel injectors from cylinder 5, cylinder 6, stuck a borescope down in there, and I did see damage to cylinder 5 and to cylinder 6. Now, what we had on this one was a complete and total failure of that part. This is part of the air grid heater that the battery cable affixed to right here. This piece sits on top of the intake air grid heater, and then the stud, which you can see has totally corroded away, has fallen down into the engine. This would be the air grid heater. The stud comes through it right there on the bottom, and as you can see, the rest of it is gone. Again, when I get the engine tore down, we'll do another video on it, and I'll show what the damage exactly was inside of the engine after I get the head off. But this problem could have been avoided. This amount of damage could have been avoided had the customer brought the vehicle in when the check engine light first came on. Now, that many key cycles, it's just negligence at that point. However, it is what it is. So let's move on past that. You've seen everybody talk about the Banks Monster Ram intake which not only does it increase the efficiency of the engine, and all of you are aware of that it frees up the flow of the intake air charge coming in. It also provides the ability for the air intake heating system to still function, but without a part that can fail and cause catastrophic damage. The heating element on the banks is quite different than what the heating element is on this one, so on the factory. So yes, please do, it's a preventative maintenance thing. This engine's going to end up costing somewhere in the neighborhood of $26,000 to fix, to replace. There's no shortcuts on it. You can't just let it run with damaged pistons, and this engine ran just fine. I'm sure at some point it made some loud clunky noises, and those noises were disregarded by the customer, and they ended up bringing it in for the check engine light. I guess they either found that it was annoying to look at every time they started their vehicle, or whatever the reason, they finally brought it in. But that many key cycles from when it first came on, just it's negligence. There's no other word for it, no other term for it. But here we go. So we get the cab off, as you can see, and I've got the top of the motor pretty much tore apart. Parts are just stuck back in there because, again, I went through the preliminary diagnosis and ran a borescope down into cylinder 5 and cylinder 6. So it's, at this point, because it is a warrantyable part, warrantyable failure due to their powertrain warranty, we have to go through this. I have to take the top of the motor off, get the head off, as this engine is a restricted part. So we have to go through a bunch of hoops in order to get the restricted part released so that I can replace this engine for this customer and get them back on the road. Now, that being said, if this was on the customer's dime, $26,000, I don't know about you, I don't have that kind of change laying around to replace an engine. Definitely wouldn't want to take out a loan for it. What else can you say? You get a check engine light, you need to get it into the dealer or your shop of choice or whatever avenue you take, but you can't just continue to let it go. I can't stress that enough. A lot of people I see a lot of times where vehicles come in and the check engine light's been on for an extended period of time. It is not something that you should take lightly or put off until you can afford it. I mean, part of owning a vehicle is being a responsible vehicle owner and making sure that your maintenance is up, and if you have issues such as a check engine light, all of that affects the ability for the engine to run as optimal, to reduce emissions and so on and so forth. Now, I don't want to hear from everybody that the emissions is part of the problem, and it is a fact. It is part of the problem, but it's not something that we can get away from. We can't just delete our vehicles and still be in good standing with what we as responsible vehicle owners should be doing. You can't bypass the emissions control devices just because you don't want to deal with it. It has to be there. We have to be more stringent with how we treat our vehicles. We invest a lot of money, a lot of time into owning these vehicles, keeping them clean, driving them, getting them, getting us to our favorite camping spot, pulling our camper, our boat, whatever. When you have an issue, we need to get them in and get them looked at right away so that something like this doesn't become such a catastrophic failure. Again, we've got to take responsibility on this. Now, as a manufacturer, they need to take some responsibility on it too, and that's why this is going to be warranty. But this kind of failure could have been avoided. could have been avoided by several different means. So I hope you guys enjoy watching my videos, and I can't remember if I said it at the beginning, but Happy New Year to you all, and thank you for tuning into the channel. Again, if you have any content that I can get for you, let me know. I'll do what I can. So always looking for good ideas for new content. But again, we'll have another video come out after I get the head off and can show you what it did to the head, what it did to the pistons, so on and so forth. And then I'm not going to go through the boringness of actual replacement of the engine, because you know, probably seen 150 videos online about that. But again, thank you for tuning in, and again, let your friends know, subscribe. It's been awesome having this kind of a forum going. Definitely recommend it to anybody who is passionate about their hobby or their work as I am. So thank you, and have a good day.